Is this the best bourbon you can get for $60 or less? Today we're doing a review of Old Forester 1920 to find out. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Hutch, and thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the world of whiskey. So that's right, today we are digging into Old Forester 1920, which is, by all accounts, one of the best widely available great whiskeys out there, right around the $60 mark or less. So let's just do a brief look at the stats on this bottle and then we'll do a quick review. So this is obviously from Old Forester Distillery. It's part of their Whiskey Row lineup. It is 115 proof. Like I mentioned, right around that $60 mark. The mash bill on this is 72% corn, 18% rye, and 10% malted barley. So right in that sort of middle rye content here. But certainly corn forward for sure. Age on this, non-age stated, at least 4 years old, probably a little bit older than that. And because Old Forester has specifically heat cycled warehouses, this could present as much older than even 4 to 5 years old. So as you can see, I certainly enjoy this bottle. I've had quite a bit of it. Honestly, I was a bit surprised that I haven't done a review on it yet. I have put it in a blind matchup against its brother, Old Forester 1910. To see the results of that, I'll link up here and you can go watch that video after this one. But for now, let's just dig into the nose and palate and finish of Old Forester 1920 and see what makes this such a crowd-pleasing whiskey. Before we dive in, do just want to say that if you're liking the video and if you like Old Forester 1920, hit that like button and then hit that subscribe button too. Really helps the channel grow, but also helps me know what specific kind of content to keep creating for you guys. All right, let's get into the nose now on Old Forester 1920. All right, good sweet nose, sort of like burnt caramels, a creme brulee presence to it in terms of sweetness and richness. Good vanilla and good cherry. And then what I think stands out on a lot of Old Forester products for me is a really nice sweet banana note. And just a hint of dark chocolate too, like a bitterness, a little bit of oaky bitterness and dark chocolate. So really nice, inviting, but complex nose that's got good sweetness with just a touch of bitterness to sort of balance things out. Really draws you in, and overall really powerful. That 115 proof is certainly present. There is a slight bit of ethanol tingling there, but nothing to overpower it at all. So overall, really, really good nose. Let's get into the palate then. Cheers, everybody. Okay, so much of that richness from the nose and sweetness transfers over. There's good brown sugar and caramel, good cherry, and even a darker kind of fruit presence to it, like a dark cherry. Good oakiness and a slight woodiness. Toward the back end, I feel like it goes dark caramel, maybe a touch of that oaky woodiness sticking around. And then throughout it all, there's a vanilla and a little bit of that banana sweetness that sticks around too. So overall, again, presenting from the nose to the palate as a mixture of sweet with a slightly tannic, a little bit more bitter note, a little bit of dark chocolate as well. Just super well balanced. And as I'm talking, I'm getting more of that like vanilla and banana sweetness lingering. Really, really good. I often get a nutty quality on this too, lingering there. I didn't quite get that on that sip, but that might be drawn out through some more sips here. So let's go back in for sip number 2. But again, as you can see from the flavors I described on sip number 1 and the nose, just a really wonderfully complex bourbon that has just all good flavors going for it. Let's go back in for another sip. Cheers. Okay, so almost everything stayed the same there except 2 new elements kind of emerged for me. One is a really nice barrel char presence on it, so giving it a sense of spice and barrel presence there. And then a little bit of that nuttiness, just a touch of it, nothing to overwhelm it, nothing to be like, ooh, that's a peanut shell in a glass to overwhelm it or anything. Just a good strain of nuttiness existing there underneath all of those other really good sweet flavors. There's a reason Old Forester 1920 is just well regarded by most who sip it, and probably, from what I can tell, the number one recommended. Like, if I just had to go out and get a really nice bourbon for somebody as a gift around 60 bucks, or I want to step up my game and get into this slightly higher tier, like really, really fantastic whiskeys that have more proof, Old Forester 1920 is going to be a lot of people's first recommendation, and for good reason. And it's probably going to be one of my first recommendations too. All right, let's get back into the palate here and really focus on the finish and what lingers on this whiskey. Cheers, everybody. Okay, so there's a bitterness that lingers, an oaky presence, and a dark chocolate presence that certainly stick with your palate for quite a long time. But along with those come a mixture of nice sweet flavors, like a sweet and spicy cinnamon presence, banana, and vanilla. Throughout the progression, I mean, you're getting a good blooming heat, lots of flavor punch, both on the front and mid palate, and then the finish just lingers with a good mix of that slight bitterness, but mostly a good, well-rounded sweetness. That's just really, really nice. That vanilla and banana and cinnamon, I mean, I could sip on that for days. There's cherry in there. Just a really, really fantastic and well put together whiskey. One that lasts quite a long time with a really good finish. One that is going to be approachable for most people, especially as you step it up in proof and just overall flavor punch. This is one I would go to for stepping up your game, recommending it to somebody else for getting into a whiskey that can really just display full force, dialing it up to 10 on a lot of flavors. How powerful and yet how not overwhelming and just really pleasant a whiskey can be at this stage in its life. So, is this really the best whiskey you can possibly get at 60 bucks or less? I can't quite answer that question without blinding it against a lot of others in that category. I myself am still exploring that category quite a bit. But in terms of my own journey so far and what I can tell from other people's recommendations, there's almost nothing that beats this in that category. So if you haven't gone out and tried Old Forester 1920, look an upgrade to something really nice in that $60 range, this would be probably my first recommendation. I don't think you can go wrong with it. It's just a really fantastic and well put together whiskey. All right, everybody, that wraps up everything I have to say about Old Forester 1920. It really is really, really good. So until I see you guys again for another video, all I can say is keep drinking good whiskey and cheers.